Greetings, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar sponsored by Omicron, a certified partner of RtTech Software. Your presenters are RtTech's Rick Van Schie and AGL Energy Head of Asset Intelligence, David Bartolo. I am Ryan Bolin, your moderator, and we are so glad you can join us. Today we will learn about RtDUET, a layered OSIsoft PI application from RtTech Software designed to collect, organize, and calculate availability, reliability, and productivity data for power generation units using the OSIsoft PI system. RtDUET uses asset analytics, asset framework, and event frames to implement the IEEE 762 reporting standard for power generation units, thereby simplifying NERC-GADS compliance. This webinar will teach you about how RtDUET can maximize availability, productivity, and reliability of power generation assets, identify root causes of failure more easily, automate data collection and analysis steps for NERC-GADS compliance reporting, facilitate the implementation of CBM and RCM initiatives for asset optimization. Now I'm happy to introduce Rick Van Schie, a support and sales engineer with RtTech Software.
Thank you, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned, I'm a sales and support engineer from RtTech Software. I've been with RtTech for about 11 years now, and I'm their principal engineer for power generation clients. I've been working with various power gen clients for the last 4 years, in particular AGL, helping them roll out their solution there. So for today's webinar, just give you a bit of a rundown of what we're going to go through. I'll start with a short presentation that's going to give a background into RtTech and RtDUET, who we are and what DUET is. And then we're going to launch into a bit of a demonstration of RtDUET and show you a live demo of how it works, showing you various screens, how it can be used by managers and or operators. And then we're going to finish up with a bit of a discussion with Dave Bartolo, a client of ours from AGL, who's going to have a bit of a talk about how AGL is using RtDUET and the value they're getting out of it. So RtTech is a company based in Moncton, New Brunswick in Canada as a software development firm. And our main product is RtDUET for monitoring downtime and asset performance at various locations. And it's what we call an industry agnostic tool. So it's not restricted to any particular industry. We have customers in food and beverage, power generation, mining, smelting, you name it. RtDUET is used can be used in pretty much any industry. It is a PI-based tool, so that indicates that we collect all our information and it works on top of PI. So as you can see, we've got quite an extensive client base, and again across several industries. So you've got mining customers there, power gen, smelting, paper manufacturing, food and beverage. There's a various large number of customers, and that's obviously not all our customers. That's just a small sample. And you'll also see that we're also got installations right across the world. We've got more than 150 sites. I've got to admit, this is a bit of an old slide. I think it's closer to 250 now. We've got installations right across North America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia. So we're quite a global installation. All right, so a bit of a talk about the architecture of DUET. DUET leverages the power of OSIsoft PI to deliver KPIs. So we use PI as our backend to collect data. So PI is pulling data out of your control systems, out of your SCADA systems. DUET can use that data to monitor the conditions and the state of your plant or your equipment in your plant. And then via some configuration, we can tell DUET what to look for. And so we can tell when parts of your plant is down, and then we can basically then calculate, your downtimes and the reasons for those downtimes. And then with that information, we can calculate your KPIs. So in power gen, that equals all the power gen KPIs. In other industries, that's other KPIs like OEE and availability. But for power gen, it's more like things for your availability factor or your unit D-rate factor, and those kind of KPIs. So we'll just show a simple layering diagram here. You'll see at the bottom, we have the field devices, which is basically a SCADA, your control system, which feeds data into your PI system. And then you've got an architecture, an asset framework designed in AF. And then above that, we have our layer, which is where DUET sits. So if DUET sits there, you'll see several components here. I won't go into too much detail about those components. And then above the DUET level, we can have SQL Microsoft SQL Server, or just PI client tools, in which data can be pulled straight out of PI and displayed and replicated in SQL. And then you can use various third-party reporting systems, so like ERP, Tableau, Power BI, and you can use that to represent your data in any which way you like. All right, so now I'll get to the demonstration of DUET. So we'll start at the end. So we'll start at where the end product is of what DUET generates. And what DUET generates is your KPIs for your system. So you'll see here, we're looking at the availability factor, the planned outage factor, maintenance outage factor, and the unit derate factor. So these are the KPIs that we've configured in the screen to see. And we can see how they're tracking over time. So we're looking at the last week worth of data, and we can see it. And over here on the left-hand side, you'll see an asset structure. So we're looking at stage D for a particular site within our design, and we're seeing the KPIs that it generates. So we can look at that over time. So this is our reporting page. What you'll see here in terms of columns of KPIs and what you see here in the graph, that's not locked in stone. So you don't have to show those particular KPIs. If you have other KPIs which are more important to you as a site or as a business, then you can choose to show those KPIs instead. And that's just a matter of configuration. There's no code changes needed for any of that. All right, so at the moment I'm looking at stage D. I can look at stage C. So we can see the KPIs for that, or we can look at particular units. So at the moment we're just looking at unit 7, or we can go to the entire site. And if you really want to, you can go up to the entire business. The other part of the KPI screens I'd like to show you is the dashboard. So this is more of a dashboard showing gauges. So here we are looking at more of our KPIs, and we can look at, we're looking at the equivalent availability factor, as well as the other ones we're looking at before. We're looking at more of the equivalent KPIs here. So these are all KPIs that DUET generates straight out of the box. So you don't really need to do a lot of configuration to get it to generate those. The KPIs, the formulas for all these KPIs are built into DUET. You don't need to configure any of that. That's already there. It's just a matter of saying, this is the KPI I want to see. I should also mention that all these KPIs you're seeing here are as per the IEEE 762 standard. So we're using that standard as our Bible of how the formulas for these KPIs. Now you also see here in the dashboard that we've got the reasons. So these are the reason codes, the reasons that have been given to various downtime events to use to build up these KPIs. So you can see what the top reasons are and the amount of weighting that they've got. And you'll also see here on the right-hand side, we have a comparison with previous days. So at the moment, we're looking at the last day that's just completed. And then we're going to look at the previous 3 days and how the numbers vary. So we can compare the current shift or the current day to the previous days. Now you might notice that they're saying that the current date's 22nd. That's actually because I'm here based in Australia, and actually it's the 23rd here, the 22nd here this morning. So I'm a little bit ahead of where you guys are in terms of time at the moment. Alrighty, so the question is, that's really nice. It calculates the KPIs, but how do we get there? Well, we get there via the events and monitoring our events. So I'll take you to the events screen. So here we are looking at the event screen for the last 12 hours of operation. Now this is typically what we call an operator screen. So this is the screen that the operators use and they see. And again, you'll notice we've still got the asset tree down the left. So the context of what we're seeing in our display is governed by this asset tree. And you'll see here that I'm currently looking at stage D. So I'm looking at all the events for stage D for the last 12 hours. So at the top, we have a graph, that chart that shows the state of the assets. So we've got 2 assets, so 2 different colored lines. The top line shows that the unit is available. The middle line shows that it's in a derate state. And the bottom line indicates that it's in an outage. So you can see how it's tracking over time and what state it's in. You'll also notice here in the bottom panel is the events table. The events table here shows all the events, and these are events as they're coming in automatically. So DUET monitors your PI tags automatically, and when certain thresholds are crossed, when your rating and when your power gen level goes down, is turned down by the operators, we can detect that, and we can say, okay, you've gone into a D rate because you're now below your capacity, your threshold, and then we can tell when the system is off. What that does is it enables DUET to track to the second the accuracy of your events. So we can tell to the second when the event starts and to the second when the event ends. And that's really important because that really determines your accuracy of your data. And Dave will go into that a little bit later. We'll discuss about the accuracy and the impact that's had at AGL. But that's a really important thing about being able to capture accurately when your events start and when they end.
If I could just chime in. What we actually track is the megawatt availability we're declaring to the market. And as the megawatt, if the megawatt availability comes off the registered rated value, RtDUET will say, has it gone to zero? If it has gone to zero, it registers and starts an outage event. And if it goes to something above zero, but below the registered megawatt capability, it starts a D-rate event. And that's very similar to what happens in the North American markets.
No worries. Thanks, Dave. So, yeah, you'll notice here that we've got each event's a row on the table. You also notice here we've got a couple of extra columns here. These columns are custom columns that I've defined for this system. And it can show you the exact megawatt hours loss for each event and the relevant dollar value. So you'll know that a D-rate event or an outage event that may cost you $5,000 today may cost you $50,000 tomorrow, depending on whatever the spot price is. So it's very good to be aware. You can also compare the dollar values that have been lost, and you can report off that later. So, all right. So this is the operator screen. This is the screens the operators use. What an operator will typically do is he'll see a new event come in, and he'll want to classify it. So he'll double-click it, go into it, and this will show the reason code and the time usage code. So you see here that these time usage codes are aligned with the IEEE 762 standard, and they are basically what is used to build your KPIs. So your operator will select the relevant time usage code for the event that's happened. So he'll know what stage in it, whether it's a planned maintenance event or whether it's an extended or it's a reserve, you're currently in a reserve shutdown, and he'll be able to choose the relevant code and then choose the relevant time reason code as well. So the reason for the event went down. So he knows it was on, in the feed circuit, it was the third conveyor, and it was a maintenance event. So it's a planned outage, extension maintenance. Now, there may be extra information that you may want to record with the event that maybe the system's not allowing him to record. So we can type in extra information in the free text field here. And save that.
Yeah, for those generator people out there, our operators are very active in the comments field, writing disparaging things about that they've told the engineers a number of times that we need to get on and do our job. So it gives us a live view of their view of the world. It's quite entertaining.
So sometimes you may detect there's a D-rate event going on, but it may be for multiple different reasons, or there might be an outage and it may be a maintenance, but then it might be a maintenance overrun. So you may have two reasons for the same outage, and you might want to break the event up. And what we have here is an option to split events. So I've got an event here that's going from 4:35 to 4:45 in the morning. And I can split it. So I can select the event and click split. And then you can choose the time you want to split it at. So you've got a nice little slider here you can use to choose your time to split it at. And you can save that. So split it at 4:39. And then you'll see here we now have two events. And then what you can do is you can then edit it and then change classification on one of them. So I can say, well, actually, that was a jam and it was a forced outage.
Rick, just here, a feature that generator people will understand. The reason code trees that we've programmed into RtDUET and are ready are from the NERC reason code trees, but they can be adjusted.
Yeah, so we're not locked into those trees. Those trees are flexible. Normally what we do is in various industries, we sit down and do a workshop with the client and we work out what reason tree they want. In the case of AGL, it was, well, we want to implement the NERC reason tree with some adjustments. So that's what we ended up doing. Right, so one other thing that we have in here to protect data integrity is to stop operators from going back and changing data to get the reports that they want. So what we have here is for shift supervisors, we have a facility to lock an event where they can just select an event, or they can select multiple events at the end of the shift and say, okay, I'm happy with those, they're coded correctly. I want to lock those. So selects the 2 events he wants to lock and selects validate. And they're saying there's a problem because I don't have a time usage code on that one. So it's telling me I can't do that. It needs to be fully coded. So I'll try again. So do I want to lock that event? I'll say yes. And it'll now change color to dark blue. So that event is now locked and an operator will no longer be able to change it. The reason code and the time usage code is locked. Whereas an administrator can then decide in the future, hang on, no, that's wrong, I need to fix it. The administrator does have abilities to unvalidate and unlock it. Right. So I've showed you the KPI dashboard. I'll also quickly show you the reports dashboard. Right. And I want to show it in weighted duration. And I want to see all levels. So this is giving me a basic Pareto breakdown of all the reason codes generating my reports. So this helps doing root cause analysis. It's good to generate KPIs and see your overall numbers, but if you want to dig down into it and say, okay, what's the reason for it? You can start seeing what's the big reasons. Now, at the moment, I'm showing this in weighted duration, but this report can be modified to display in dollars or megawatt hour losses. So whatever units you want to see it in can be configurable. Now, the one thing I should mention is all the data you see here, all the data in DUET is all retained in the back end in PI AF and in PI tags. So all the data you can see here, you can use PI client tools such as PI Vision or Data Link to pull the data out and visualize it the way you want it. There's no restriction in the license to stop you from doing that. We're not making any attempt to restrict your access to the data. You don't have to use our client tools to access it. And in addition to that, we also have a SQL replication service where all the data in DUET, event data, KPI data can be replicated in SQL, and then you can generate your own custom reports. So if you want to use Power BI, SSRS, or Tableau, or whatever reporting system that you use to visualize the data in your own custom way, you have full access to that. And if you want our help with that, we can do that too. And I should mention that's exactly what AGL doing. They're using the SQL replication service, and they built their own custom reports, and I believe they're getting a lot of value out of that. So I've run a little bit over time in this demonstration. So at this point, I might hand over to Dave Bartolo, and then he can have a little bit of a chat about the value he's getting out of DUET at AGL and his project.
So hello, everyone. My name's Dave Bartolo. I've been in the energy industry in Australia for 25 years. I've been with AGL Energy now for 14, going on 15 years. And the situation we faced back in 2015 was we had OSI PI. So we'd centralized our data across our 10,000 megawatts of mixed bag generation, everything from coal, steam cycle, gas turbines, hydros, you name it, we had it, and we've got it. And we were still using manumatic, variable different types of methodologies for doing our availability type KPI calcs, everything from 2 full-time resources, pouring through paper logbooks every morning, trying to work out what happened the day before, and then using Excel spreadsheets to calculate the factors. No comparisons between the sites because they all did it differently, even though it was supposedly to the one standard. So we'd grown very quickly. We were a collection of companies. Everything was being done differently and very inefficiently, and the numbers couldn't be audited. We had no chance there, and there was certain problems. We approached RtTech. We said their tool comes really close to what we want, but we need IEEE 762 compliance with the KPI engine. We worked with them, and we got that all programmed in. We ran tests on this site that you see photographed here, which is a 1280 megawatt natural gas-fired steam cycle site with 8 units. And we found in the first month, the accuracy of reporting increased incredibly. On average, and this is very similar to our sites with manumatic processes, we were getting a capture rate of outage and derate hours of about 83-84% on their best month. That went to 99.9% as soon as RtDUET came in. All the calculations were automated and consistent. As we rolled it out, we got to a much larger site of over 2,600 megawatts. They were extremely resistant to putting this in because they had some electronic scripting that they had written themselves. But when we audited it, it was very manual anyway, with cut and paste type integration. We ran a test there for 3 months, and we found that they were underreporting their availability by 5%, which is absolutely massive. We were chasing improvements that didn't exist or were going to be a lot more expensive to implement because we were much higher on the availability table than we thought we were. Yeah, I think that gives you an idea of where we were and where we got to. What is the most value now that we have RtDUET in place? Yes, the RtDUET API is extremely flexible and always improving. A perfect place for validating. On many of our sites, operators use it directly to input the data. On our larger sites, the operators didn't want to use a new technology to do this. So we actually have integrated that transaction where we capture an outage or a derate. We've integrated that transaction to go through to the electronic logbook directly from RtDUET. It requests the operator to do a reason code and a classification code through drop-down tables. That takes all of 30 seconds, and we're getting classified data directly from the operator in real time of what's going on. And then a validation asset performance type person every 24 hours on a weekday does a check and a lock-in of all of these using RtDUET. And then we have quality assured event frames in Pi as permanent records that we can slice, dice, analyze until the cows come home. And then we can use things like Microsoft BI to produce more interactive Pareto analytics that we're using, that all the performance type people and reliability people are using to really drill down into the groups and subgroups of reasons that we're losing value. And then they take it from there. So that's what the picture looks like for us. The config, the calculations are all centrally controlled very efficiently, and we've freed roughly a person and a half of senior technician type bandwidth on the sites because the validation process for a 4-unit large site is taking about 20 to 25 minutes a day maximum. So this has really helped us along. So that's my story, and I hope to assist through the question session. Rick, over to you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Much appreciated. So, Ryan, if we want to open up the Q&A, have we had any questions come through on the chat?
We had a question on how much effort to implement RtDUET.
All right, so The effort to implement RtDUET, the actual rollout of DUET on a given site can vary, but generally speaking, you're talking under 2 weeks on site to actually do the rollout between the installation and the training. However, prior to the rollout, there is the need to do a bit of a workshop to identify the reason tree, because that's one thing that varies from site to site. So we need to know, we need to work with the client to do a bit of a workshop to identify the reason tree. If it's simply just, you want to implement as per NERC GADS, then that's fairly straightforward. If you have something that needs to be modified a bit, then okay, there's a bit of back and forth that needs to be done to identify those. But once that's done, the rollout is pretty straightforward, and usually it requires about 5 days on site to do the installation and commissioning, and another 5 days of training for your users. So it's usually about 2 weeks on site per site.
How are the events created in Pi?
The events are created in Pi. DUET has a calculation engine. It's basically a Windows service that sits in the background and just monitors your Pi tags. And it looks for values as they cross thresholds. So you have, sorry, Dave, what was that name of that tag that you were monitoring again?
The megawatt available tag is what we all, and that's a tag that we make megawatts available to the market. So that's a very official tag. And we monitor that tag as soon as it comes off its rated, registered output value. An event will be created. And if it goes to 0, that's an outage event. And if it goes to something in between, that's a derate.
Yeah. So DUET is just watching that tag continually on a regular basis. And as soon as that tag goes below the threshold, DUET will see it and say, and because Pi records it very accurately as to when it went down, DUET just uses that timestamp recorded by Pi, and it just watches that tag and watches it across the thresholds and generates the events accordingly.
If it goes from one derate value to another, we cut the event and we start a new event. So if we're down at 450 megawatts, we've got a cold derate, and then we lose a feed pump, and we come down to 250 megawatts. RtDUET says, that's a new event, and ask for a new reason code, and that works very well for us.
Yeah, and DUET's monitoring that. So as soon as these changes occur, it's creating the event frame. So in real time, it's creating these event frames, and they're appearing in Pi straight away.
How much AF configuration work is involved?
Very little, because at the end of the day, we actually have a client tool that you can use. I'll quickly show it to you. So this is a thick client tool. So this is what we call our toolkit, where you configure everything. So you create the assets and everything. So what we do is we start with a blank DUET AF database. So we just create a new database for DUET, and then DUET creates all the templates and everything it needs, and then you design your structure, your asset structure in here in the toolkit, and the toolkit will create those required elements and templates in AF for you. So it doesn't require any AF configuration at all. As long as you have a current AF system, DUET can use it.
Somebody asked if they can use Power BI as a reporting tool.
It's a big yes. We're doing it right now, and it's really cool.
Yeah. So any reporting tool that you have that can use SQL as a data source, which is pretty much every reporting tool out there, yes, you can use that to report RtDUET data.
How much effort is required to keep RtDUET current?
Once you have your configuration set, which is pretty much done at installation, the effort to maintain it is minimal. Your asset structure is pretty much set and forget, as is your reason tree, unless you're needing to maintain the reason tree and add reason codes as your operators point out things that might be missing. But that can all be done, and that's part of the training that we provide as part of the installation rollout. You can edit your reason tree as you go. So as you can see here through the toolkit, you can get into it yourself and modify it. You don't need our intervention to do that. And we normally have one administrator per site who's in charge of doing it. I think AGL have one administrator across their business. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, that's correct. And one thing we've done at our end to really make it a set and forget and something we don't need to worry about, because we're such a large group, we're 10,000 megawatts, we're running this on most assets, is we run RtDUET on its own AF server, and We can update it when we like and at leisure, and it's made life very, very easy. So it just runs on your AF server. Update it when you update AF, basically.
Yeah, so the configuration, once it's installed, is pretty much set and forget. The maintenance effort involved is quite minimal. It's just a matter of your operators keying in the events when they occur, and your ship validator is validating it.
I can report I'm not getting paid. It's extremely stable software, and it's extremely reliable. It works very, very well, and I'm not getting paid. Right. So,
how does it distinguish between being dispatched to a lower load versus a derate?
We do not track the megawatt output. We track the megawatt declaration of available megawatts. So I think that answers that. It's a very good question. Our approach years ago, we had to decide what we're going to track. When we read IEEE 762 in its pure form, that's exactly what needs to be tracked. So that's what we work on.
And that was, I think, the real point that we had to work towards and discover, I think, Dave, when we first started rolling it out with AGL, is like, what are we tracking and what are we reporting on and what does DUET need to track? And it took us a little while to figure that one out, didn't it?
Yeah, we had one or two misfires. It's all right. We got there in the end.
Besides the standard IEEE KPIs, what other KPIs is AGL tracking in DUET?
That's a really good question. We've got some gas compression assets and gas storage assets. We are deciding right now what KPIs we're going to track with that, and we're working with Rick. We're going to configure. We found an international petroleum standard that we're going to work to, and we're going to work actively with Rick to basically use this system and configure it for our needs. We have not done OEE yet. But we have a license with RtTech that allows us to do that at leisure. We're probably going to use OEE on our conveyancing systems at one of the large coal sites. But yeah, we're just starting to explore other things that we can be measuring after a massive effort to get IEEE 762 calcs working across our entire fleet. So good question. There is more potential, and we're going to go for it fairly soon.
Yeah, RtDUET was originally, our original customer base was the mining industry, where OEE and availability, utilization are all the very big KPIs they need to track. So out of the box, we calculate all of those and a bunch more. The list of KPIs is as long as my arm that DUET calculates out of the box, and we can provide you a list of that if you want that. But the other thing I should mention is DUET's also very capable of calculating custom KPIs. So if you have a custom KPI just for your site or just for your business, we can configure DUET to calculate that by using the power of the AF templates. We can configure the formulas in there and add them to the system and then display them in the DUET interface. So we're fairly flexible in terms of what KPIs we can generate.
We would like to thank Rick and David for presenting today and every one of you for attending. We hope you found this webinar valuable and have triggered your interest. If you are interested in exploring RtDUET and this topic further, please contact us at rtduet@omicron.com or sales@rttechsoftware.com. Rick and Dave, again, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.